Hello and welcome to Invested in Transforming Sport. This episode, we're talking to a sports investment company that's unlocking game-changing innovation to reshape the future of sport. We're talking to SURJ. It's a fully owned PIF company, and I'm joined by the CEO, Danny Townsend. I'm Kimberley Leonard from PIF, the investment engine driving economic transformation for Saudi Arabia and the world. We're discussing how SURJ will level up MENA's sports ecosystem, deliver impact and returns across the region and beyond, and open up new opportunities through strategic global investments. Danny, thank you so much for talking to us. It's such a pleasure to have you here. Let's begin with, why was SURJ established and what is its main mandate?
Yeah, look, SURJ was established just over a year ago now to really drive the sports sector in the kingdom through international investments into IP that is going to be transformative for those sports, both internationally, but more importantly, the way I look at it, what impact we can have here on the Saudi Arabian sports economy.
What do you mean by that, international investments in IP?
So IP, like any type of sport that generates interest and has rights to sell and is a commercial enterprise, they are opportunities for investors to invest in. And for us, our unique mandate really is how we go and take those international sports and bring them to life here in the kingdom, as well as drive the growth of the sport more broadly around the world, to then ultimately deliver returns back on the capital that we're deploying on behalf of the PIF and the kingdom.
Now, as you said, it is so new, a year old, right? Talk to us about the name, because it's significant in English and in Arabic, isn't it?
Yeah, it was one of those quirky things I really liked when I came in. When I was told about the name of SURJ, I sort of went, what is that? How did that come about? It looked like an acronym at the start. And then it was explained to me that it's Arabic for saddle. And I think when you look at what we're trying to achieve in guiding the sports sector and the sports economy, both domestically and internationally, then the saddle is where you guide that from. And I think that in an English application, SURJ is about moving forward and driving change, and I think that's also something that's really important to our business.
You're one of the most international, influential sports leaders. Can you just give us a brief background of who you are and where you've come from and how you ended up here? Yeah,
that's very flattering. Look, I'm Australian, but I've spent most of my working life abroad. I started off as a professional footballer, obviously loving sports.
And when we say football,
soccer,
football,
the real football.
Right,
the global game.
We've established that.
Yes, the global game. Started off as a professional athlete, had an injury that ended my career relatively early. I was in my sort of early 20s, and after going back to Australia for sort of 5 or 6 years and getting my daughters through high school, out of the blue I was contacted about an opportunity, and it was interesting that the opportunity that was originally presented to me was in relation to the Premier League in London, and I said to the recruiter, look, it'd have to be something extraordinary for me to move abroad again, particularly at the stage of my life with my family. And about a month later, the same gentleman called me up and said, I may have extraordinary. And he presented this opportunity that the PIF had put on the table, and it certainly was extraordinary. It was a mandate that, to look at what the kingdom is about, where it is in its journey, and particularly that journey relating to sports. It's the most exciting place to be in the world right now.
Why is that? Because I'm sure many people listening don't fully understand why. Why is it so exciting?
I think it's clear that the kingdom is on a journey, and that journey is rapid. And I think when you look at the social change as an expat, that's fascinating for me. To have a front row seat to the change of a country is a unique experience that I don't think you get anywhere else in the world right now. And I think, when you come from a more developed market like Australia or the UK or wherever else, it's stale. You don't feel the energy that you feel here. And whether that be through construction of infrastructure, whether that be ambition for hosting major events, whether it just be general transformation across society, that's engaging, that's enthralling. And I think that's something that is unique to the kingdom right now.
And SURJ is a wholly owned PIF company, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We have one shareholder, and it's the PIF, and we have a board that has a PIF representation, but also others that are contributing from different parts of the sector, whether it be the Ministry of Sport, through the Deputy Minister, His Excellency Badr El-Khadi, or whether it be Joris Francini, who is a ex-CEO of Endeavour, industry stalwart. We've got a really fantastic group of people that are supporting this business.
In terms of your international experience, extensive international experience, how are you going to leverage that to help lead SURJ's strategic direction?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. There's obviously doing the deals that we need to do, which is the mandate we have as SURJ in deploying PIF and the Kingdom's capital into effective growth businesses. But importantly, the way we think about it is we don't want our capital just to be passive and sitting within, a mature and developed economy. We want to make sure our capital is transformative to that sport. So when we look back on time, when we get out of that sport at the appropriate time, we look back and we can be proud of the impact SURJ and Saudi Arabia has on some sports that have been around for hundreds of years that have potentially become a bit stale and a bit of product apathy that we can unlock through innovation and deploying our capital effectively. So I think there's that bit, but then there's also how we as experienced industry practitioners can educate young Saudis. I've got an amazing team of well-educated, ambitious young Saudis who are really keen to learn more about the subject of sport and the economics of sport. And again, I sort of say to them that they're in probably one of the most unique environments of any individual of their type around the world because they're exposed to so much. And I think they're in a very fortunate position, not necessarily from me, but more broadly what the Kingdom is doing in the sector.
Let's talk about the economics of sport and the socioeconomics in particular. There are great opportunities, aren't there?
Absolutely. I think sport is a great engine for change. I think when you look at His Royal Highness's Vision 2030 and the mobility metrics that are attached to that, sport is a major driver of wellbeing. It brings people together. It creates communities. And I think as we look to that vision becoming reality, it's about getting people feeling more comfortable to play sport, whether they be male or female. You look at the numbers of females playing sport now compared to where they were sort of 2015. I think it's something like 150% growth, and that's accelerating. It's not decelerating. The number of events the Kingdom has hosted over 120 international events now. So we are really maturing as a nation. Sport's been around for a long time in Saudi culture, and that's fantastic. But I think we are in this inflection point right now, and our role as SURJ is to really have a positive impact on that with the other stakeholders in the industry, whether that be the Ministry of Sport, the General Entertainment Authority, the PIF and the broader Giga projects that are all really dialed in to making sport a really important part of our culture.
It does seem to go hand in hand with being an active investor and also with how PIF is investing, building these ecosystems and really having an impact for generations.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice thing that sort of coexists with the PIF's ethos is we want to make change. We don't want to just park money and sit on boards and ask questions. I think we've got to lead by example. We sit on international boards that we invest in where we're surrounded by Americans or English, and a lot of them are private equity representatives who are sort of marking the homework of the management. I think our job is to roll up our sleeves and work with them, and I say it all the time, we are active investors, not to be distractive, but to be accretive to their ability to grow the business. And I think that's broadly a PIF thing, and I've been really impressed by that in observing other sectors, and we're taking that same approach to sport.
We speak of the PIF effect, that ripple effect, that this investment here is going to have such a huge impact, and I'm sure you see it firsthand.
Yeah, I think the placement of SURJ within the MENA investments vertical of the PIF structure says it all. You could naturally think if we're investing globally in sport, we would sit in PIF International, but the fact that our mandate also covers the growth of this sector domestically is a really nice mandate to have because it gives you two reasons for being. It's, yes, I want to go and make an impact globally, but I really want to be able to change the face of the sports economy here domestically, particularly with some amazing events coming down the pipeline.
So how are you going to do that? Or how have you already done that, actually?
Our first investment was the PFL, an MMA promotion called Professional Fight League. MMA is in the DNA of the country, and I think combat sports are something that resonates with Saudis, and we've seen that with the engagement we've had so far. But what we really loved about the PFL investment, notwithstanding globally it's going to occupy a really competitive position with UFC over the next decade, part of the business model for PFL, which differentiates itself, is that it regionalises its sport. It creates PFL Europe, a regional sport for emerging MMA athletes to get on a pathway to the top. Now we've established PFL MENA this year, which is giving 35 Middle Eastern MMA athletes the opportunity to perform in a professional environment.
And that's men and women, isn't it?
Men and women, yeah. Hassan Al-Seif has been probably, Abdullah Al-Khattani might argue that she's stealing his limelight, but look, they're two great, amazing athletes. They're great stories, and those stories couldn't be told if it wasn't for what SURJ is doing in investing in the space and bringing to life that opportunity for those athletes. And we want to do that across many sports because these athletes are amazing and they deserve to get a stage to perform on and use that stage to go on to perform on the global stage. And we would love to see, and we're really confident that both those amazing athletes will represent the kingdom, in PFL International Series, in Madison Square Garden or wherever it might end up. But yeah, that's really part of what we're contributing to that journey.
And there has really been a buy-in from the audience, hasn't there?
Yeah, I would go back to the PFL Bellator Champs v Champs pay-per-view event that we had in the Kingdom, part of the Riyadh Seasons, earlier in the year, just down the road here. It was a phenomenal event. There were world-class MMA athletes on stage that night in the ring. The two that stole the show that night were the two Saudis, and when they stepped out into the ring and hearing the noise in the auditorium lift, it just went to show how much support there is for Saudi athletes. That was an MMA example, but you could take that example into any other sport that we're looking to really drive. So yeah, there certainly is an appetite for the Saudi Arabian people to get behind heroes. You've seen it recently with the Olympics, seeing Saudi athletes perform in Paris and win certain parts of their event, which I think gave everyone inspiration to really get out and start to learn a craft, learn a sport, pick up a racket.
You talk of levelling off the MENA sports ecosystem. What does that mean exactly?
I think, another thing I love about the PIF and Saudi is that we sort of take a responsibility for the region. We are the biggest population base and economy in the region, and therefore, it's in our interest collectively to grow sport across the MENA region, because if you look around the different geographies and you cluster them into continents or what have you, the one that's really thrusting in the last 5 to 10 years is the Middle East, North Africa area. I think it's underutilised as part of the global sports economy. Qatar has done a great job in getting out ahead of certain major events, but I think Saudi has the potential to really drive that and take a leadership role there, and we see that as SURJ. We're always trying to look at, if we are investing in a sport, how can we bring it to life in the kingdom, but also how can we bring it to life in the neighbouring countries that are all potentially not lucky enough to have the same resources that we have to make a difference. So we take that responsibility seriously, but first and foremost, we certainly want to make sure that Saudi's leading the way.
When you're looking at an investment, what are the things you're taking into consideration when you're deciding yes or no?
The way we think about it largely is, sports that have foundational strengths, sports that have been around for a long time, who have enormous participation bases around the world, sports that serve the biggest economies, because we're a commercial business, so ultimately you want to drive return, and the big economies drive return. Sports that skew young, because ultimately the customer lifetime value of a 10-year-old is far better than a 60-year-old. So if we've got sports that can attract and engage the youth, that's a great thing, and that marries very well to the Saudi ecosystem, given the youth skew to the population base. So, big sports, big economies, big population bases, big participation bases. We like a little bit of product apathy, where the sport may have not adapted itself for the changing consumer behaviour. If we can see our capital being a catalyst for transforming that sport, reinventing that sport, and taking advantage of those foundational strengths, then we'll see enterprise value growth in the sport. And that will deliver the returns we're looking for, but also enable us to look back on our time as a custodian of that sport as having a real positive contribution.
And how will you make sure that the returns that are driven do, in turn, drive change within Saudi Arabia?
That's a really important part of what we do, is coexisting and working closely with the Ministry of Sport. His Excellency Badr Al-Qadi is on our board for that very reason, is to ensure that we are in lockstep together. So what are the priority sports of the ministry? as it pertains to the kingdom? How can we ensure that we follow their KPIs around trying to make effective change and develop those federations? I think there's 97 odd federations. I think the ministry have done a fantastic job in creating federations around these sports to start taking them on that development journey. And our role is to go in and help them achieve their goals through our capital deployment and our localisation plans as a result of that relationship we would have, upstream into the global sport.
So what's the response when you're looking to make these investments and you're going to these sports and you're saying, listen, we have this capital, we want to invest, but we want to make sure that we're going to bring this sport to the region?
Yeah, I think that the first positive is that they're embracing us with open arms. I think there's a genuine curiosity around what's happening in the kingdom. Most sports organisations have not really taken advantage of the opportunity in the Middle East, and I think, we're in a very competitive environment. There is institutional money coming into sport all over the world. I think the last sort of 5 years there's been a real realisation that there is returns there waiting to be taken advantage of if you execute the right way and you deploy the capital the right way. So we're competing with other sovereign wealth funds, with other private equity funds, and the family office days of owning sports for vanity reasons has sort of moved on, and it's all about the economics. But I think the differentiator for us is that we've got a reason for being. We're not just about deploying our capital and hoping for the best. It's about saying, yes, we will provide you with the capital in your balance sheet, but we'll give you an opportunity to unlock a region with our help. And that's getting boots on the ground into the kingdom, bringing events, bringing development pathways, high performance facilities, just general facilities that are going to enable Saudis to engage in that sport. If you go back to our PFL investment, we're working with Qiddiya on a combat sports institute where young Saudis who are developing, who would one day aspire to be in PFL MENA, can go and learn that trade from the best coaches in the world and then take their first step in that journey to one day being an elite professional MMA fighter in PFL Global.
And you have teams, don't you, within SURJ who, if someone comes in, you help them with everything, don't you? Setting everything up. I've heard about every level, there's someone who will support you.
Yeah, it's a bit like the PIF incubating our business. When you sort of, we were lucky to establish ourselves inside the portfolio of the MENA investments team, who even to this day remain involved in a lot of stuff we do and add enormous amount of value for a business that's still only sort of 12 to 18 months old. So, our goal is to help land these global businesses and global sports into the kingdom as effectively as possible and incubate them like we were incubated by the PIF and PFL MENA's office is inside ours, and Jerome, who's the MD there, has got the same resources I have as a CEO of SURJ. They're open to him, and he takes advantage of those where he can. So he will get to a point where his business will mature, and he'll move out and stand on their own feet, which is part and parcel of the journey that we want to take these sports on.
Do you work with other PIF companies or entities?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the huge advantages we have over the private equity market is that, they might have portfolio companies, but at the end of the day, what influence private equity companies have over portfolio companies is probably limited at best. When we're all part of one family, so whether it be, the corporate affairs team with the PIF, who are also in the sports space through the partnerships they're signing up to, like the ATP and WTA, which has been fantastic for them and for us more broadly, whether it be the ministry, whether it be the General Entertainment Authority. I think the alignment of the kingdom is really important because the collective strength of PIF companies, whether that be the Giga Projects, Portcos, ourselves, and then interacting with the public sector, is a unique, I suppose, connected group that no one else in the world can compete with. And that's, I think, for SURJ, being selfish, that is a huge advantage to us. We walk in with the strength of the kingdom behind us. And I think that's seen as a real positive thing in most part with the conversations we have. Well,
I was thinking immediately of all your international experience. Have you experienced anything like this anywhere else in the world?
No, and I think that's what attracted me here. I saw, the North Star that's there that the kingdom is following, and just the collective commitment to that. I say that the capacity and the conviction for executing on a plan is what's critical. Like, a plan is a plan, but having that capability and commitment to getting it done is another thing. And that is there for everyone to see. And I think when I look at what I've done in the past and working in New York or London or Singapore or back in Australia, I've never seen the collective energy of anything like what's going on in the kingdom right now, and that's invigorating and it's something that I think that anyone who's lucky enough to be here at the moment will probably look back on in 10 years, 20 years and go, well, wow, that was a ride.
I'm sure this is the question you must always get. And they said don't ask it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What's next? What are you going to invest in next?
I can't tell you that. But look, what I can tell you is that whatever we invest in is going to be transformational for the sport. Like I said, we're not interested in passive investment. We want to make a difference to the sport we're investing in globally, but importantly, we also want to land that here and really drive change and growth. We sort of look at the investment opportunities in two ways. Big, transformational opportunities to drive existing sports of significance that have rich histories, but also opportunistic ones. How do we bring to life new IP that's going to be different and engage a youth audience and actually really orientate well with the kingdom? You've seen the success of esports here the last couple of weeks. It's been phenomenal.
I want to talk to you about the culture within SURJ. What kind of culture are you building and how does that align with PIF's culture?
Yeah, I think, look, it comes a little bit down to my way of leading in the sense that, I'm very much around bringing people through and ensuring that they get a degree of autonomy around what they do. And, providing that opportunity is really important to me. And I think I take that responsibility seriously as an expat who's got a role to play in really growing the experience and the subject matter expertise for Saudis in this growing sector. But, I think when you look at what the PIF are about, to your point around really investing and empowering a sector to grow, taking on the baton that's typically been set up by the public sector and then driving the private sector involvement and therefore attracting international investment. I think that's one of the really important parts of my role as well, is demonstrating that there's opportunity to invest in Saudi Arabian sports ecosystem and make money. And we're involved in a number of projects at the moment where we are seeing global operators who are world-renowned, who are peering over the fence and wanting to know what's going on and really starting to show appetite to invest here as well.
It kind of speaks to my final question, really, which is how does it feel to be part of the legacy of what's being built here in Saudi Arabia and have that global impact, that ripple effect around the world?
Yeah, like I said, that's probably one of the things that attracted me to come here in the first place. I could go and work in any investment company around the world that focuses on sports. None of them are going to have the impact on the country in which they're from like this one. When you see where sport has come from here, which has been fantastic, but where it's got to go is enormous. And, there's certain things you do in your career which you do because it's part of your sort of stepping stone to where you ultimately want to get to. I've been fortunate enough to run my own agency for 15 years and then go and work in sports leagues and do all those things. And I was content with that. And I wasn't really looking to do anything different until this opportunity was presented to me, and the uniqueness of playing a really integral role in the changing dynamic of a kingdom, and being able to look back on that in 10 years' time and go, the work I did have a material difference on a country. I think, without being too sort of emotional about that, it is a real driver of what gets me up out of bed every morning. So it's pretty unique and exciting.
I can imagine it is quite emotional at times, your job.
Yeah, I remember sitting there, ringside when Hatam went out and knocked out her opponent, and just the joy, and you'd sort of look at that and the crowd going nuts, and he's thinking she would never have had that opportunity if it wasn't for what we were doing. And by the way, it was all her hard work. We had nothing to do with that. We just gave her the platform to do it on, and we're going to continue to do that across multiple sports in partnership with the ministry. And let's hope there's a lot more Hatans coming through, and we're sure there are, and there'll be stories being told about those moments for decades.
Absolutely. Danny Townsend, thank you so much for talking to us.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much wherever you're watching or listening from. We'll see you again soon.